Your face is saying yes. Your heart is screaming no. But somewhere between the two, your mouth forms the words, "Sure, I'd be happy to help." And just like that, you've done it again. You've abandoned yourself for the comfort of someone else. You've erased your needs to avoid the possibility of conflict. You've performed the oldest magic trick you know, disappearing while still being visible. This isn't kindness. This isn't compassion. This is survival. And it has a name. It's called the Fawn response. You've probably heard of fight, flight, and freeze. The three famous trauma responses that kick in when we perceive danger. But there's a fourth response, quieter and more insidious. One that psychotherapist Pete Walker coined when he recognized a pattern that traditional trauma theory couldn't explain. The Fawn response is a reaction to threat by becoming more appealing to the threat itself, consistently abandoning your own needs to serve others to avoid conflict, criticism, or disapproval. It's also called the please and appease response. And if you're reading this thinking, "That's just me being nice," then you need to hear this. Fawning isn't generosity. It's a nervous system adaptation that once kept you alive, but is now keeping you trapped. Here's what makes the Fawn response so difficult to recognize. It looks like virtue. It looks like empathy, maturity, selflessness. People praise you for it. You're so accommodating. You're so easygoing. You never cause problems. But beneath that smooth exterior, something is dying. Your authentic self is suffocating under the weight of everyone else's needs. And the tragic part? You learned this strategy so early in life that you may not even remember deciding to become this way. It just became who you are. The Fawn response typically develops when children are raised in dysfunctional or abusive family systems, where they're trained by their primary caregivers to repress and deny their feelings, thoughts, and needs. Think about a child growing up in a home where love is conditional, where a parent's mood determines whether the day will be safe or terrifying, where expressing your true feelings results in punishment, withdrawal of affection, or emotional abandonment. That child learns something crucial for survival. Their authentic self is dangerous. Their needs are burdensome. Their boundaries are unacceptable. So they adapt. They become hyper-attuned to the emotional states of those around them. They learn to read micro-expressions, vocal tones, body language. They develop an almost supernatural ability to sense what others need before those people even know themselves. And they provide it. Immediately. Automatically. Without question. Children who are abused face a profound conflict between their need to flee a dangerous environment and their biological drive to attach to caregivers. We are hardwired for connection. Our survival as infants depends entirely on maintaining relationships with the adults who care for us. So when those adults are also the source of threat, the child's nervous system makes a calculation. Since I cannot leave, and I cannot fight someone bigger and more powerful than me, I will make myself indispensable. I will become exactly what they need. I will mold myself into the shape of their desires. I will forfeit my own existence to secure theirs. This isn't a conscious choice. It's an unconscious survival strategy orchestrated by a nervous system doing everything it can to keep a child alive. Now let's talk about what's actually happening in your body when you fawn. From a neuroscience perspective, something fascinating and devastating occurs. The fawn response involves both the fight-flight sympathetic system and the freeze dorsal vagus system activating at the same time. Think of it like pressing the gas pedal while the emergency brake is engaged. The sympathetic system provides the fuel for the micro-movements and actions needed to please others, to read the room, to anticipate needs. Meanwhile, the freeze circuit causes dissociation and disconnection to suppress any expression that doesn't meet others' needs and to protect your psyche from the loss of autonomy involved in this survival performance. This is why fawning is so exhausting. You're not just being helpful. Your entire nervous system is running two conflicting programs simultaneously. When the fawn response is activated, you've entered a state of dorsal vagal shutdown, where you may experience absent-mindedness, dissociation, and depersonalization. You're there, but you're not there. You're smiling and nodding and agreeing, but internally, you've vanished. The fawn response involves people-pleasing to the degree that you disconnect from your own emotions, sensations, and needs. You lose track of how you actually feel. You can't access your authentic preferences. If someone asks what you want for dinner, you genuinely don't know, because you've spent so long determining what everyone else wants that your own desires have become foreign territory. Fast forward to adulthood, and these patterns don't just continue. They calcify. Fawn types seek safety by merging with the wishes, needs, and demands of others, acting as if they unconsciously believe that the price of admission to any relationship is the forfeiture of all their needs, rights, preferences, and boundaries. Your relationships become one-sided. You're always the one doing emotional labor. You're always the one checking in, remembering birthdays, mediating conflicts, offering support. And when someone asks how you're doing, you reflexively say, "I'm fine," even when you're drowning. Because showing your struggle feels like burdening others, and burdening others feels like risking abandonment, and abandonment feels like death. Pete Walker defines codependency as a fear-based inability to express rights, needs, and boundaries in a relationship, characterized by a dormant fight response and susceptibility to being exploited, abused, or neglected. This is what fawning becomes in adult relationships. Codependency. Not because you love too much, but because you've learned that love means self-erasure. You attract people who need fixing. You stay in relationships where you're consistently undervalued. You become resentful, but you can't leave because leaving would mean confronting the terror you've been running from your whole life. What if I'm not useful? What if I'm not needed? What if nobody loves me when I'm not performing? As people constantly focus on meeting the demands of others, rather than their own needs and wants, it can lead to a decrease in self-worth and confidence, leading to dependence on external validation for feelings of value. Your identity becomes tethered to how others perceive you. You have no sense of who you are outside of your utility to other people. And the cruelest irony? Often you're the one obscuring others' ability to truly see you. You hide behind the mask of agreeableness so completely that nobody, not even your closest relationships, knows your authentic self. They love the version of you that never disagrees, never has needs, never causes inconvenience. But that's not really you. That's the fawn. And the real you is buried so deep that sometimes you wonder if they even exist anymore. The physical toll is devastating. You're constantly tense, always scanning for threats disguised as social cues. From a polyvagal perspective, over-reliance on these circuits leads to feeling exhausted, depleted, and burnt out. Chronic illness becomes common. Your immune system weakens. You experience unexplained pain, digestive issues, fatigue that no amount of rest can cure, because your body is still running those conflicting programs, still pressing the gas and brake simultaneously, still performing the exhausting dance of simultaneous engagement and dissociation. But here's where it gets complicated. When we fail to see the fawn response as a trauma imprint, we pathologize what is, at its core, a strategy for staying alive. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're not manipulative or fake. Your nervous system found a way to survive an impossible situation. The fawn response is intelligent. It's adaptive. It worked. The problem is that what saved you then is imprisoning you now. You're still performing for an audience that's no longer watching. You're still appeasing threats that no longer exist. You're still sacrificing yourself on altars that have long since crumbled. So how do you heal? Healing begins when you learn that safety no longer requires self-erasure, that you're allowed to take up space, to disappoint others, to have boundaries and still be worthy of love. The first step is recognition. Start noticing when you're falling into the pattern. When you suspect you're fawning, ask yourself, am I saying or doing this to please someone else? Is it at my own expense? Do my actions align with my personal values? These simple questions can create a pause, a moment of choice where there was once only automatic reaction. Practice listening to your body as a way to come back home to yourself. Your body holds the truth your mind has learned to suppress. Notice the knot in your stomach when you agree to something you don't want to do. Pay attention to the tightness in your chest when you silence your authentic opinion. These physical sensations are your inner wisdom trying to get your attention. They're saying, "This doesn't feel right. This isn't aligned with who you truly are." Start with micro boundaries. Practice pausing before saying yes. You don't have to become confrontational overnight. Begin small. "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." "I need to think about that. That doesn't work for me." These phrases might feel terrifying at first. Your nervous system will scream danger. People might react with surprise or disappointment because you're changing the rules of a game they didn't know they were playing. Others' discomfort often reflects their adjustment to the changing dynamic, not your worth. Build self-worth outside of others' approval by engaging in hobbies that make you happy, even if they aren't your friends' or partner's favorite things. Rediscover what brings you joy, independent of anyone else's reaction. Your value is not determined by your usefulness. You don't have to earn your right to exist through service. You are inherently worthy simply because you are. And please, be patient with yourself. A fawn response is habitual, which means it's hard to identify when you're doing it. You've been practicing this survival strategy for years, maybe decades. It won't unravel overnight. There will be moments when you slip back into old patterns. That's not failure. That's the non-linear nature of healing. What matters is that you're becoming aware. You're beginning to see the bars of the cage you've been living in. And awareness is always the first step toward freedom. Your authentic self has been waiting. Not the performance, not the mask. The real you. With needs and preferences and boundaries and occasional inconvenience. That self deserves to take up space. Deserves to be known. Deserves relationships built on mutuality rather than self-abandonment. And every time you say no, when you mean no. Every time you express a genuine preference. Every time you allow yourself to be imperfect and still lovable. You're not being selfish. You're coming home. You're proving that you can survive without disappearing. And that might be the most revolutionary act of all.